So a serger is a great tool for whatever kind of sewing that you do. Today we're going to talk about the Babylock Celebrate. It's a 4-thread overlock serger, and we're going to take it through its paces and see some of the stitches it does and real-world examples about where you'd use them. I'm Cathy, and today this is Sewing Tech Talk. So we have a giveaway for this video. We have this cool pack of serger thread. Now this is embroidery thread, but you can totally use it on a serger. Yay! So like, share, or comment, and every time you do, you get a chance to win a cool pack of thread because you need more thread. We all need more thread. Now the handout for today is something kind of simple. This is a layered ruffle. It's called a snail or a spiral cut ruffle, and it makes a great scarf also if you just make it all by itself. You just cut a big circle and you cut it in like the shape of a snail shell or whatever, and so it works really, really great. It's in your handout, and I included the settings for the Celebrate serger that I used to do this. So that's your handout. But let's get to it. So we're going to go through the stitches on the Celebrate. Remember, this is a 4-thread overlock serger, and it's doing all those serger stitches that are like dancing on the edge of the fabric. It's a Babylock serger, so it's a self-threading serger, and this is the first one in the lineup of Babylock sergers. So every Babylock serger does what this one will do. The difference between this and the rest of the machines in the lineup is this one has tension dials. The sergers after this, the self-threading sergers in the lineup, they don't have tension dials. They have a different setup, which means you just literally pick the stitch that you want and it goes automatically there. Now, tension dials, not that big a deal. The instruction book is really good to show you exactly where those settings need to be, and you'll see me adjust those a little bit throughout this video. So not that big a deal. So now we're set up for a 4-thread serger stitch. What does that mean? It has 2 needles, a left needle and a right needle, and this machine has an upper looper and a lower looper. Now a serger forms a stitch by having a loop cast on the top and a loop cast on the bottom. That needle catches both. So I have the left needle in, it's going to be the one that catches the edge of those loops. The needle on the right, in the case of a 4-thread serger, is kind of like a safety stitch. It kind of stabilizes that stitch, so it's not quite as stretchy as, say, a 3-thread would be. Now if I took out the left needle, just use the right, well, you'll see that in a minute, but it's just a smaller stitch. So a 3-thread stitch, a little bit stretchier than a 4-thread. What do you use a 4-thread for? Well, now a 4-thread serger stitch can totally be used for a seam. So for example, when I made this garment, that was just my seam. It was just the serger put these pieces together. This is a 4-thread serger stitch, and that's the only seam in this garment, and it works really, really good. Now this seam you can't open up. So if you wanted to create a seam that you needed to open it up, then you're going to sew a serger stitch on either side. Let me show you what that looks like. So here's 2 pieces of fabric, and if I wanted to sew these in my garment so that I'm opening up that seam, I'm simply going to serge on either side of that edge. So I put it on in there, get ready to go, make sure my presser foot's down, and rock and roll. Now in a serger, what's so cool about that is you can feed one piece right after the other. And a serger sews lickety-split. Notice that a serger cuts at the same time that it sews. Yes, you can disengage that knife. You cannot cut for special situations. But what happens is by it cutting at the same time you're serging, and there's a cutter on the side, it makes that absolute perfect stitch. So it trims the edge right exactly where those loops are going to meet. And so it looks perfect every time. Now I'm using red thread so that you can see it. If I was doing this on my regular garment, I'd use a matching thread, take this over to my sewing machine, sew my seam, and it totally opens up. Why would you open up a seam? Well, maybe you might have a bulky kind of a garment, so a bulky kind of a fabric. So here's some real bulky, like a wool, and I would just as easily put that 4-thread serger on either side. Now, this is kind of thicker. The machine can handle it, but I don't need my stitch length to be that short. So I'm just going to turn this knob down here. Remember, this is not a construction stitch. This is just covering over that edge so it doesn't ravel. And you can see how much faster it's feeding on through. Now, if this was not feeding through faster, I actually have a pressure on the top. I can lighten up the pressure on that foot if I want to let it go through real easy. So once again, there's the edge, perfectly stitched on the edge of my bulky fabric. If I was making a coat, I would do that on either sides, sew my seam right in there, easily open up that seam. So you can sew the edge of a seam before you open it up, or it could be the seam itself. Now here's something that I brought that I wanted to show you. This is a really weird fabric. This is a knit that's really, really open. Now imagine sewing this on your sewing machine. There's these big spaces in between the holes of the fabric. So on a sewing machine, all you'd see was that little tiny line on the sewing stitch as it goes through there. But on a serger, it really works great. Now I would sew this with a matching like white thread, but let's see what it looks like with this red thread. Notice I didn't have to change anything between the bulky fabric and this thin fabric. So there's my seam on this goofy fabric, and you can see it looks really good on the other side. It's just a professional finish. So a serger can give you a professional finish. Now let's stick with that 4-thread for just a tiny bit more. Here's a skirt I did, and the elastic in the waistband. Have you ever had like a pair of pants, an elastic waist pants or skirt, and that elastic wants to twist on you after you wash it? Well, what I did on this particular garment is I took that elastic, cut it to the size that I needed it to be, and I literally serged it to the edge when I had that raw edge of the fabric up there on the top of the skirt. Stretched the skirt out, stitched it as I went down through there. In this case, I turned down the knife. I didn't cut the edge of the elastic, and I just sewed real carefully along the edge. When I got finished, turned it over, stitched it down with my sewing machine, and it's a real lightweight, beautiful elastic finish that's never going to twist on me. I love this skirt. It's really easy to wear. So now, that's a 4-thread. Now, if we take off one of the needles, we still have the upper looper and the lower looper. If we take out one of the needles and the thread associated with that, what we're going to do is we're going to go down to the 3-thread. We're simply not going to use one of those needles, so we can take it out. Now we can take out the left needle, or we can take out the right needle. I'm going to take out the left needle. Here's a trick that I like to do. Notice the thread is still in the needle. I'm going to undo the needle, let it drop down. It goes in just like a sewing machine needle, really. It just sticks up in there. Here comes the needle. Now the thread is still on there, so the needle's kind of held, and if I drop it, it's not going to go anywhere. There's actually a little door at the bottom to help you get a needle out if you drop one, but this is a trick I like to use. So there it is. I'm going to take that needle out, clip it off, take it off, and save it for later because it's still good. I'm going to take this thread out because I don't need it. So now I've taken my thread out. I've gone down to a 3-thread serger stitch, and this is a narrow one. Now, I don't have to worry about the tension on this dial, and quite honestly, I don't have to worry about the tensions on those knobs either. It's literally just a smaller stitch because I took out that left needle. So now when I sew, I can do a smaller seam, and it's going to be just fine, but it's going to be just a little bit smaller. Let's sew these two pieces together with that seam that's smaller. So there's my seam. Notice I just took out a needle and I took out the thread. Everything works great. Now I probably should have shortened my stitch length just a little tiny bit. I simply take the knob and I turn the stitch length a little bit down and I have a perfectly awesome seam. This is a very small, delicate one, and if there's anything that you're sewing that you just want a smaller, more elegant seam, like say it's a silk or something like that, this works great. Now, what we can do is we can also gather with a serger. Now, a serger has 2 sets of feed dogs, and a serger can really effectively control fabric. Because if you look on a sewing machine, the feed dogs, they're about yay long, right? Maybe about an inch. On a serger, it has 2 sets of feed dogs, and it's literally about 3 inches long. So it can really control fabric with that long foot and all of those feed dogs down below. The cool thing about this serger is it has 2 sets of feed dogs and they can work independently. So if I want to gather a piece of fabric, what I can do is tell the machine that I would like to gather, and that front set of feed dogs will work faster than the back set. So say I want to take a piece of fabric, I'm going to gather it on up. And I can gather with a 3 thread, I can gather with a 4 thread, I can even gather with this narrow 3 thread. Let's see what that looks like. Now I want my longest stitch length for that. And you can see it beautifully gathers this fabric. Look at how cool that is. Now, if you're doing this with a sewing machine, it might take you a little bit longer because you'd have to come in and gather those layers out. Now, I gathered this particular piece because I wanted to show you a trick. Now, I can take this machine and I can switch it over to what's called a rolled hem. And a rolled hem is a really tiny, elegant edge. That really tiny, elegant edge is something like you might see on the edge of a napkin, but it's just real elegant, small, and fine. So let's pretend this is, say, the ruffle on a pair of curtains. It could be a bed skirt. It could be a blouse and a skirt. Doesn't matter. It can be elegantly finished on that edge with that rolled hem. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell the machine that I want a smaller stitch. This serger works. It forms the stitches on what's called a stitch finger. And the stitch fingers, let's pretend it's this big. Now, if I want to do a smaller stitch, I want to take off half of this, so I want to pull half of that stitch finger down. Now, on most sergers, what you have to do is you get a separate needle plate that has that smaller stitch finger. On these Overlock sergers, however, all I have to do is turn this knob down below and turn it to where it says rolled hem, and it literally pulls that stitch finger away. It's just the turn of a knob. I don't have to change a plate. I don't have to worry about it. Now, the one thing about, though, a rolled hem is it's an uneven stitch. So when I did those 2 loops on this stitch here, this stitch right here, the loops met right along the edge. And I want the one to be pulled down to the other side. So I want this edge to roll over that tiny stitch finger. So what I'm going to do is I am going to adjust my tension on this serger. I want the bottom looper tension to be tighter. So I'm going to turn it up. I think the book says 6, but we can take an experiment and see what works. And the top thread, let's just leave it for where it is right now. The neat thing is, if you're going to adjust the tension dials on this serger, it's not rocket science. If you want more tension on one, you just make it a higher number. And take a sample, stitch on the sample. If it works, great. If not, play with the tension just a little bit. Let's see what I did. Oops, I forgot. I left it gathered. Good thing I sewed on a sample. Let's take it down for N for no gather, neutral, nothing. It's good to know that you could gather with a rolled hem if you wanted to. I don't know why you'd want to, but you could probably figure out a way. Now I can see with this thread that I can see that I have a space in between. I want a shorter stitch length. So all I have to do is turn my knob to a shorter stitch length, and I'm going to get a little bit closer threads. It's working pretty good. That's working pretty good. You can see, I can see that there's space in between, and when I come over here, it's a little bit closer. But one great thing about a serger is you can use all kinds of thread with a serger. So let's explore something that we would use with a serger that we might not use with our sewing machine. So for that rolled edge, I have what I like to say is the stretchiest, fluffiest thread in the whole wide world. This is a woolly nylon, and it's kind of like a crimped thread, and it's really, really soft. And the beautiful thing about it is it's fluffy, and it really covers that edge. Now, when I thread this serger, I have looper threading ports down here to pull the thread on through. Now I'm going to put this thread in the upper looper because that's where I want that more coverage. You might have seen it like on the edge of napkins. So it can shoot through if it's a regular thread, but something this stretchy, fluffy, puffy, may not want to shoot through so easy. So let's make what I like to call a thread cradle and pull it on through. So let's thread up that upper looper. Now I'm going to cut out this thread because I really don't need it in that upper looper. And we'll take it on out. And that's where we're going to put our woolly nylon. Now let me sew these threads out. Now in any other serger, remember, you'd have to rethread the whole thing after you did this. Not on a baby lock serger. So now, when I want to thread the serger, I have what's called tubular loopers. And I tell the serger I want to thread by pushing this button and turning the knob on the side, and it literally snaps into place and engages. Now, I want this fluffy thread to go through that threading port, but it's kind of puffy. It kind of doesn't want to go through. Not a problem. I have thread that loves to go through that threading port, so I'm going to cut off a big old hunk of it. I'm going to grab the two ends, bring them together. I got a lot of thread here. You probably don't need that much. And I'm going to take these two ends, and there's a loop on the other end, and I'm going to shoot these through the upper looper threading port. So I stick them in, get that out of the way, I stick them in there. Oop. There we go. Now when I push this lever, it's going to come on out the upper looper. Whee! There it is, just like that. Now the fun part is, I just take this edge of this really fluffy thread, put it in the loop at the other end, and I'm just going to pull it on through. Just like that. So now a thread that didn't want to go through those threading ports, quick, fast, and easy. Now, the other thing you can do is say you have any other kind of thread that doesn't want to shoot through there, maybe a little bit thicker. The beautiful thing on a serger is you can use some thicker threads. Use that same technique. Pull it on through with that thread cradle and you're ready to go. Now, I do want to think about my adjustment on my tension because I have this fluffier, different thread. So what I'm going to do is, first of all, we have to tell the machine we're going to serge again, take it out of threading mode, is I'm going to come on the side of my sample. I'm not going to change any of the settings right now. I'm just going to sew one and see if I have to make any adjustments. First of all, I can see that I have my stitch length way too close together. Because remember, this thread is fluffier. And it's not really rolling under. Oh, I know. I need to tighten that bottom looper thread. Let's see if that works. Well, would you look at that? Just by making a couple of adjustments, I have a really nice edge. Now, I wouldn't use red as the needle thread on this, but it's really, really an elegant edge. And I would use this for the edge of napkins, but let me show you a real-world example. I did this dress, and it's a really, really fun knit. And on the bottom, I didn't want a type of a hem that I turned up. I simply used this type of edge on the bottom of my dress, and it's a really lightweight hem. So you can also use this as a seam. Let me show you this. I have this little dress, and this little dress is done entirely on the serger. I know it looks like an heirloom dress, doesn't it? But all of the seams are done with that tiny little rolled edge, and it made the most beautiful, elegant finish on the inside. Even the lace is sewn on with that delicate little rolled hem. Now, I didn't use woolly nylon for that. I just used some fine serger thread, and it worked really, really well. So we've just done a few of the stitches. There's one more that I really want to show you. So let me clean up my mess a little bit, and we'll come back, and what we're going to do is we're going to do some magic stuff. We're going to go down to just 2 threads, and we're going to do something on a serger that I bet you didn't think you could do. I'll be right back. So now let's go down to 2 threads. So what I did is I just took my needle from the right hand side and put it in the left hand side. Now I could make a small 2-thread stitch with the needle on the right. I just want to make a bigger one because I want to show you something kind of cool. I don't need the upper looper. I've gone down to 2 threads, so I need 1 needle thread and 1 looper thread. Now on this machine, I have to make a quick little tiny adjustment because I'm missing that upper looper thread. So what I do is I take this little doodad right here and I swing it up and over, and it covers up that upper looper port. It makes it like a little pusher of some sorts. I've literally just changed it over to a 2-thread. Now this 2-thread is a 2-thread flat lock. And what a flat lock is, it's a stitch where when you stitch it, it's a seam, and then after you stitch, you pull it open, and it's flat. It lays completely flat. It's super great for active wear, a bathing suit, anything where you want a flat seam that you don't want anything that might chafe, that might be a little bit thicker. So I've taken out my upper looper, I've moved my needle over to the left, and I've engaged the 2-thread subsidiary looper. It's what it's called in the book. Pictures in the book. Easy to do. Now, I have my regular threads in there, and I'm just going to do a flat lock to show you, and then I'm going to do something cool with a flat lock that you may not think you could do before. But we need to adjust the tensions because this is an uneven stitch just like that rolled hem. So the neat thing is, in the book, it literally shows you suggested tensions for what would work. Now, I have a 2-thread flat lock, and I have my needle in the left hand side, so it wants me to go to a tension setting of 0. Okay, 0. And then it wants me to have that lower looper tension. Remember, there's no upper looper. It wants me to have that lower looper tension at 3.5. Okay. So those are the suggested settings. Now remember, all I have to do is stitch a little sample and see if it works. Let's see if it works. So here's a couple of nice little knit fabrics. Let's see if we can get that flat lock going on this. Close my doors. I think I'm good. I don't want to be on rolled hem anymore. And it wants me to have a stitch length of between 2 and 3. Okay. Oops, I forgot. I can also adjust my width. And the book says I'm going to be at a 7.5. Now there's numbers on this dial, and each number is unique. All I did was change the number to 7.5. Now that I've matched the book, let's see what I got. So there's my seam. It looks really goofy on one side, and it looks like a regular 3-thread on the one side. So all you do on a flat lock is you take it and you pop it open and you work it out. You can be kind of aggressive with it. So what happens is it takes that top, those fabrics, and it lays one right on top of the other. One side looks like a regular old stitch, and the other side has what's called the ladder side. Now either side can be the top. This one looks kind of cool. Now I've done some interesting things with the flat lock. Let me show you this dress. This dress has a zipper down the back, and it's a really sexy gold zipper. So what I did is I wanted the zipper to really show out. I used really fancy thick gold thread, and I did a flat lock to put that zipper in on either side, and it came as a really elegant decorative effect. So you can do some real fun stuff with a flat lock. So that's the flat lock on my zipper. But let me show you my final little ta-da, and it's something that you may not think that you can do on a serger. So when you're creating a garment, sometimes you want to put the hem up. You don't want a little hem like this. You want a nice, thick, juicy hem. So you can do a blind hem on a serger, and you're using that flat lock stitch. So see these little threads that are coming on the ladder side? That's the side that we're going to have the little catches on my other fabric. It's going to finish the edge and give me that great tiny little pricks on the one side. Now here's the trick. I'm going to take my fabric, fold up my hem, and then fold it back down one more time to get that edge that I'm going to sew along. This is going to be my flat lock, as it were. When I'm done stitching, I'm going to pop this open. Now there is a trick to this. I need to stitch so that needle is just grabbing that folded edge. Now, I've been using the standard foot on the Baby Lock Celebrate this whole time. You can get accessory feet for the machine, and there is one foot that makes this job super simple. It's called the blind hem foot, and it has a little gate that holds this fold over to this one side, and you literally just grab that edge. Now, I'm going to try to do it without that. I'm going to use red thread on a light green fabric. Let's see if I can do it. I'm going to sew real slow and careful, and I'm just going to grab that edge. I'm going to take my stitch length all the way to the max because I want my little catches to be farther away. Let's see what I can do. Oh my goodness, I'm a little nervous, but I hope I can do it. One thing that's really going to help me on this machine is the toe of the foot has a little like ridge, and it's going to show me exactly where that needle is. So I'm going to use that as my guide to help me get just a little bit on the edge of that fold. Here I go. Okay. Now I think I got a little bit too much of the fold. I didn't have my foot on there. Let's see what I did. Oh my goodness, I got a lot of that stitch. Actually, that could be kind of decorative. So with that special foot, I really can get some great results. I think I need to put some matching thread in and practice, but I think I got pretty good for just doing it on a video with all of you millions of eyes watching. So the Baby Lock Celebrate, super great serger. You can do all kinds of fun stuff with it. You might need a little practice on some of the more fancy stuff, but it's a great serger. If you're a beginning sewer, or even if you're just looking for that serger, you've been waiting a long time and it's time to make that commitment, you can't beat a Baby Lock serger. This is the Celebrate. They make other fancier sergers. So George, do you have a really good deal on any of the Baby Lock sergers, Celebrate, or any of the others?
Thanks, Kathy. That was a great presentation as always. Don't forget, you can download that project that she has for you by clicking on the link below. You know, a serger can truly cut your sewing time by half and give you a much more efficient and better quality stitch. The problem is, many sergers are difficult to use. The Baby Lock Celebrate has their original air threading feature, where it threads both upper and lower loopers with a burst of air. Plus, it even threads both needles. This serger instantly can change to a rolled edge just by a turn of the dial, and you get a beautiful finished rolled edge. It also works with a wide variety of decorative threads for doing a 2-thread overlock with a thick thread, or even this special serger crochet technique that Baby Lock can do beautifully. And this is shown with, again, thicker threads. Because it's easy to use, you'll do more things like this. It also has a differential feed. Not only can you use this for gathering, but it gives you control on heavy fabric, on stretchy fabric with elastic, on sheer fabric perfectly. Now, the Baby Lock Celebrate is available at a very special buy right now. Originally, it has a retail price of $24.99, but right now it's on sale for $9.99. But wait, we're including a special bonus. A bonus that includes all this wonderful decorative thread by Sulky and Madeira, as well as a 6-month online training membership by Baby Lock. This has a value of over $500 combined, and it's included free. Plus, we are not charging for shipping, and we have 0% financing available. But this is only while supplies last, so don't wait. Click on the link here. Call us at 1-800-865-9664. At Moore's, we carry the full line of Baby Lock sergers, from the most basic Baby Lock Vibrant, which offers an incredible quality serger on sale right now for $399, of course, to Celebrate, as well as the popular Victory, Acclaim, and even the top model Baby Lock Triumph 8-thread serger that threads not only the loopers, but all the needles with a burst of air, and can do up to 8 threads in combination, as well as the cover hem. And this is an amazing product. Speaking of cover hem machine, the cover stitch on the Euphoria is so amazing, where you can sew stretchy knit and active wear, and it gives you a flexible seam, but this also has automatic thread delivery, so there's no tension adjustments. But let us help you decide on the right serger. Give us a call at 1-800-865-9664, and I'll have an experienced staff member go through the different features of the sergers, discuss what your interests are, and guide you through that serger purchase. Again, that's 1-800-865-9664. Bye for now.